Hello. In this video, we are going to talk about the important concepts from the unit Socio-Political Philosophy. Now, we have clubbed the both, that is Indian and Western, in this video itself. So, we'll be talking about the concepts from both the units. What we first have is the concept of constitutional morality and socialism, very important. You see, before we get into understanding the important concepts, please try to understand that socio-political philosophy is a very theoretical subject, but it is not a theoretical examination that you will be sitting for. So when it comes to these concepts, it's a very simple thing that you need to remember. That is, you have to remember the basic definitions very well. For instance, what is the basic definition of constitutional morality? What is the basic definition of socialism? How is it different from capitalism? How is it different from secularism? All of these things need to be absolutely certain. So the first thing that we have is the definition of constitutional morality and socialism. Please watch the lecture here. The second philosopher that we have is Kautilya. Now, Kautilya is very important. You see, the philosophy of Kautilya is extremely important in the reference of the text, that is Arthashastra. So you must know every important bit pertaining to the text Arthashastra. It's all discussed in lecture 232. Please watch it here. Then we have Kamandaka. Now, the beauty of Kautilya and Kamandaka is that both of them are talking on this almost the same notions. So, how you can get the question in the exam is that you can get a comparative analysis between Kautilya and Kamandaka. So, for that, you need to be absolutely certain with things that Kautilya talks about and things that Kamandaka talks about. Here, we're talking about Niti Sara. Here, we're talking about Arthashastra. We've discussed the two in a great detail in lecture 233. Please watch it there. Then we have the understanding of secularism. What is secularism? Is India a secular country? All these concepts have been discussed in here. Like I told you, it's a very theoretical concept. You won't be asked to write a long answer because that's not the format of the paper. The format of the paper is that you have to be absolutely certain with the definitions, the important principles behind these philosophies. Then we are discussing the three important topics, that is Sarvodaya, social justice and democracy, equally important. The definition of these three, the important principles in these three. Then democracy, secularism, fundamental rights, and affirmative actions. Affirmative actions examples can also be asked in the exam. For instance, reservation is one such example. We have also discussed this in the lecture. Please watch it there. What is the principle of fundamental rights? Why are they given to each and every citizen of the country? What are the basic fundamental rights that we're talking about? They are providing protection against who? These are the kind of questions that can be asked from the concept fundamental rights. Please prepare accordingly. Then we have the understanding of constitution and constitutionalism, most important concept. You see, these kind of concepts you know, which are confusing are the ones that can be definitely asked in the exam. Now you have to understand that constitution and constitutionalism are different. What is the meaning of the two? What are the important principles under the two? It's discussed in lecture 237. Please watch it in a detailed manner. This is a very important concept. Then we have the understanding of colonialism. Please try to understand that when you're discussing the or reading about colonialism, you can obviously relate it with one of the important philosophers, for instance Gandhi. Like how did Gandhi bring in the concept of, let's say, satyagraha? Okay, what was the Swadeshi movement? So try to understand these concepts with a link, so that in case it's asked in the exam in in choose the right sentence kind of a questions, you never falter. So next is the essence of Swadeshi movement, the essence of Satyagraha or passive resistance. Then we have the essence of total revolution by the philosophy of JP, that is Jayaprakash Narayan and Nanaji Deshmukh. Extremely important. These are new philosophers added, so please watch the lecture very carefully. Then we have Plato, life, thoughts, work, and contributions of Plato. Especially under socio-political philosophy, Plato is extremely important when we are talking about the concept of justice and education. So, justice, what is his theory of justice? How does he explain the justice? For instance, the different dialogues of Plato, for instance, Republic. You got to remember all these literatures, very important, okay? Then we have John Locke. John Locke's works, life, concept of liberalism, capitalism, human nature, his views on rights, property, religion, and social contract. Amongst them, social contract is the most important one on which the question can definitely be asked in the exam. So please prepare accordingly. Then we have Thomas Hobbes. Thomas Hobbes' most important concept is social contract, sovereignty, and liberty. Please watch it here. Similarly, we have Rousseau, Hobbes, and Locke's versus Rousseau. This is one of the most important concepts. You see, try to approach this concept or these three philosophers, for instance, Hobbes, Locke, and Rousseau, in the manner that you see essentially all these three are talking about the same concept, that is the concept of social contract or the concept of sovereignty and liberty. Now, how do these three vary? This is something that we have extensively discussed in lecture 247. Please watch it there. For that matter, from the exam's point of view, Locke, Hobbes, and Rousseau, you'll definitely get at least two questions from these three philosophers from this concept. So please prepare very well. Then we have the understanding of the three philosophers, Hobbes, Locke, and Rousseau, and the central theme to their philosophies, that is the concept of sovereignty. This is what I was talking about. This is extensively discussed in lecture 249 again. Please watch this. Then we have Berlin. Berlin is very important. You have the idea of equality as per Bernard Williams. Very important. Idea of equality was, for that matter, recently asked in the exam. So please prepare accordingly. Then we have liberalism, the concept of liberalism, the history, the origin, and the types of it. Please watch this. Liberalism is also very important because it wasn't asked in the exam last year, but this can definitely be asked in the exam this one, or that is this time. Then we have John Rawls, very important. John Rawls' theory of justice is one of the most important concepts in socio-political philosophy, that is Western socio-political philosophy. Please prepare this very well. Then we have Amartya Sen on justice, extremely important again. Amartya Sen's idea of justice is very simple, and if you are thorough with the philosophy of Nyaya, then you will be easily able to understand that what is Amartya Sen talking about in here. It is also extensively discussed in lecture 255. Please watch this. Then we have classical versus neoliberalism. What you simply need to do with these concepts, because they're again very theoretical in nature, just remember the important principles behind them and the definition of these concepts. Then we have equality, evolution, school of thought, Dawkins and Sen's view, that is Amartya Sen. Also very important. We have the concept of justice, Rawls' theory of justice, most important concept, like I told you, when it comes to John Rawls. Then we have the concept of justice as is institutionalism, two principles of justice, pure procedural justice. Be absolutely certain with their definitions can be asked. Then we have Nozick. Nozick's entitlement theory is very important. Please prepare accordingly. Then Marxism. Marxism is a very important concept. Now you could either get a question on the principle, you could either get a question on one of the concepts under Marxism, for instance, the theory of surplus value, class struggle, theory of alienation, and freedom. This is a very important concept. 262 and 263 is dealing with Marxism. Please prepare this very well. Then we have equality. Now, what is equality as per liberals and as per Marxists? The idea of equality is discussed in here. So, in case you're asked about equality, how liberals understand it and how Marxists understand it, what is the difference between the two, is discussed in this lecture. Similarly, we have understanding equality as justice, very important concept. You can definitely get a question on this. Then we have the concept of communitarianism. Please be very thorough with the definition of it. What is the entire essence of this concept? Similarly, multiculturalism, in the same manner, you have to understand about the entire essence of multiculturalism, its introduction, emergence, and justification. Then we have feminism, very important. What are the different types of feminisms? What are the different waves of feminisms? What are some important philosophers under feminism? For instance, there is, there is, I'm forgetting, there's Simone de Beauvoir, the important literature that she's given, that is the second sex, very important. Similarly, there is Judith Butler. You have to remember these names of certain feminists. We have discussed them extensively in these lectures, so please go through them. And especially when I'm talking about feminists, so not only just remembering the name of the feminist is important, but at least two or three literatures by them is very, very important from the exam's point of view. So these are the important. Okay, there's also Kate Millett and Gerda Lerner's view. So, like I told you, there is Kate Millett, Judith Butler, there is Simone de Beauvoir. Just remember a few names of the feminists. We have actually discussed this in the lecture also. So prepare it accordingly. Socio-political philosophy is a very simple concept. The only easy way to approach this subject or unit is that you remember the basic principles of these concepts very well. Okay, for instance, what is the concept of justice? What is the concept of equality? What is the concept of freedom? Have a thorough understanding of it, and then it becomes very easy as to how the different branches approach it. For instance, how Marxists understand it, how liberals understand it, how neoliberals understand it. So this is the way to approach the concept. Remember the principles, remember the essence behind it, remember the origin for the same, and also remember the different types under it. Very simple unit. You'll be asked at least 5 to 6 questions from this, and I'm including Indian and Western both in this. So please prepare accordingly. and I wish you all the best for the exam.